In this movie, we'll turn this collection of spirals into a seamlessly repeating pattern using the new pattern generator inside of Illustrator CS6. I'll also introduce you to the new pattern options panel. Now, if you're familiar with previous versions of Illustrator, then you know that patterns used to be something of a pickle to create. And I'll show you how it worked, because I don't want you to work that way anymore. It creates problems. I'll go ahead and click on the spirals layer here inside the layers panel to make it active. Then I'll grab the rectangle tool, which you can get by pressing the M key. And you needed to draw a rectangle in the old days to determine the size of the pattern tile, that element that was going to repeat over and over again. So you would draw inside the spirals like so, for example. And then you would change both the fill and the stroke to none. So I'll change the stroke to none first, and then I'll change the fill to none. And then finally, you need to send the rectangle to the back of the stack by pressing Control-Shift-Left bracket or Command-Shift-Left bracket on the Mac. Then you press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. Go ahead and marquee all of those shapes in order to select them, and then drag them and drop them into the swatches panel. Problem is, if you work that way, then you're going to create a mess for yourself. I'll go ahead and click off the shapes to deselect them. And then to modify this pattern I just created, I'll go ahead and double click on it. In my case, it's called New Pattern Swatch 9. I'll double click on it here inside the swatches panel. And I get this alert message, and it's telling me a clipping mask was created around the pattern tile to preserve the legacy pattern appearance. So CS6 is already acting like this is something that was created in a previous version of the software. If I click OK, you can see that everything is entirely messed up and we do not have a seamless pattern at all. So I'll just go ahead and press the Escape key in order to leave the pattern edit mode. Instead, what you do is, of course, you grab that swatch right there and you delete it by Alt-clicking or Option-clicking on the trash can icon at the bottom of the swatches panel. And then I'll switch back to the spirals layer. And you know what? Simplest thing to do here, because we don't want that rectangular path. I'll go up to the File menu and I'll choose the Revert command, or I could press the F12 key and then click on the Revert button in order to restore the original version of this graphic. Then you go ahead and marquee all of the shapes once again to select them. You go up to the Object menu. This is what you should do now in Illustrator CS6. Choose the Pattern command and then choose Make. And that way you're starting inside the pattern generator with a clean slate. Now, you will still see an alert message because Illustrator's so fond of them that says a new pattern has been added to the swatches panel. And there it is. Hasn't been named yet, but any changes you're about to make will be automatically saved upon exit. This is a very important point, and we'll come back to it. You can turn on the Don't Show Again checkbox if you like, and then click OK. And now we're seeing the pattern. Now, of course, it's not repeating seamlessly unless you count the fact that we have white areas around all of our spirals. So we need to change the size of the tile, and you can do that using the Pattern Tile tool. And now you can drag the boundaries of this rectangle here in any way you like. You can drag the sides and the top as well as the corners until everything sort of smushes together right here. And you may not have to take it this tight, but you do want to make sure that you get rid of any of the white areas between the spirals. And in this case, I have a little bit of white. Now, it may appear as if the strokes aren't all the same colors, like the strokes of the spiral around the outside of the rectangle here are a little bit lighter. And that's because this Dim Copies To checkbox is turned on by default. If you want to see everybody the way they actually look, then you turn that checkbox off, and now you'll see that all of the strokes match, and we don't have any white areas between the spirals. Now, the great thing about this is that I don't have to do any calculations the way I had to do in the old days. I don't have to figure out how this guy is going to overlap into the next tile, for example, and repeat him down at the bottom, because Illustrator is automatically doing that work for me. So as long as I size this rectangle properly, then everything's going to repeat seamlessly no matter what. And I think I'll tuck this guy up just a little bit like so, because I do think I had some gaps going. And then once you're done getting everything the way you want it to look, then you go ahead and give the pattern a name, and I'll call mine C Spirals, for example, and just enter that name into the Pattern Options panel, and then press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac in order to accept that name. And finally, you want to click on the Done button, or if you prefer, you can just press the Escape key. So Escape doesn't cancel as it does elsewhere inside the software. Instead, it goes ahead and accepts your changes. So I'll press the Escape key right now, and at this point, we should have a seamlessly repeating pattern. To test things out, I'll go ahead and zoom out from my artwork, and I'll make sure that my drawing layer is selected at the top of the Layers panel, and I'll draw a rectangle. And I want this rectangle to be the full size of the artboard. So I'll go up to the View menu and turn on my Smart Guides, which I could also do by pressing Control U or Command U on a Mac, and I'll drag from one corner to the other corner inside of my artboard. And then I'll go ahead and change the stroke to none, and I'll change the fill up here in the control panel to C-Spiral, the new pattern swatch that I just created. And we now have, as you can see here, a seamlessly repeating pattern tile. And you can adjust it anytime you like. By the way, if you're not happy with the results, you can adjust your pattern just by double-clicking on the swatch inside the swatches panel. And this time, you will not get any form of alert message. You will just see the pattern options panel once again up on screen. You can make the desired changes using the pattern tile tool if you like. So I could drag this guy out just a little bit in order to provide a little more horizontal space. And then when I'm done, in order to update the pattern, all you do is press the escape key. And not only does that update things, but it hides the pattern options panel as well. Now, if you look closely at your pattern, you may see some lines surrounding the tiles, or you may see some bad intersections. And in my case, I can zoom in a little bit here and you can see this line right there. And that might lead you to believe, wait a sec, this is not a seamlessly repeating pattern. We've got some problems. Well, that's a function of Illustrator's screen display, and it should go away when you either print the artwork or export it to a different file format using, for example, the export command. And we'll be discussing printing and exporting in more detail in future chapters. But for now, if you encounter that kind of stuff on screen, go ahead and do a test print to see if everything works out fine. It really should, and you should end up with something that's entirely seamless. And that is how you create a seamlessly repeating pattern using the new pattern generator here inside Illustrator CS6.